Kia ora koutou. Welcome to another episode of the Chair Chats podcast. I'm Stephen, and I was a part of the Abuse and Care Royal Commission of Inquiry response group for the Baptist Union of New Zealand. I'm very grateful to be sitting here with Rachelle Martin, who is the Deputy Chair of National Council. She's going to be speaking into this space as well. We have Charlotte Cummings with us, who was the facilitator of the response group throughout the first half of this year. So welcome to both of you.
Kia ora. Thank you for having us here, Stephen, to chat today.
Yeah, great to be talking about this topic and especially highlighting the commitments that have already been made in this space.
Well, why don't we start with the deeper question for us? Like, why is this an important topic? Why do you care enough to be able to go onto a podcast like this and talk about how we respond to the RCI report?
Well, I'll start with that, shall I? So obviously I'm a member of as you mentioned, a member of the National Council. And so I have an obligation and a responsibility to care. But actually that's not really why I'm here. Why I'm here is because I would love for churches to be seen and known as places where people can flourish, where people are kept safe, communities that are free from abuse, but also where they know that they can be heard and protected and cared for. I see safety as part of our expression of the gospel that reflects who God sees us as and how we live that out together as a community. So I'm incredibly passionate about ensuring that we all work towards this being a reality for every single person in our communities.
Cool.
You know, part of my interest in this space is how do I professionally help people get from that desire to what do we need to put in place so that actually people can come forward and share when they've had a difficult experience, that we have that culture of openness and listening to one another, and that we do the preventative work that creates safety in different church communities. You know, I'm a mum and I want to be able to say to my kids, go be part of the church. You know, when you're older and without me there looking out for you, go and be part of these spaces, because this should be, you know, one of the best experiences of your life, where you feel that sense of your own value and dignity and where you certainly experience safety. So I think that, you know, a lot of us see the historic issues that the Royal Commission highlighted, that of course a big part of our process as the Church of New Zealand at the moment is putting things right that historically happened that weren't right. But also there is a moving forward piece in this of how do we really learn from those experiences and create the cultural change across churches in New Zealand that means people experience safety.
Mm. For me, I suppose I joined that response group because as a pastor, I recognize my responsibility in creating these spaces and ensuring that the space that I'm responsible for is safe for everyone, and doing everything I can to ensure safety. And I also have been a part of situations where people have been abused, where I've had to be a part of the response to those specifically. And so I know it happens. Yeah, the RCI was for a particular period of time. It's still happening today. And so we have, as you guys have mentioned, we've got a lot of work still to do.
And I think what was really nice about the response group was we had people from all different types of Baptist churches and ministries across the country who came from different perspectives, who brought really different skills to the table. But it was wonderful to have, you know, such a diverse group of people and to have that representation, I guess, of the interest and commitment that so many people across Baptist churches in New Zealand have in this space.
Mm.
And National Council, of course, was incredibly grateful for the working group, for the work that was done on behalf of us as a union of churches. It was great to be able to invite people to be part of that group, for that group to form, and then for the recommendations, a significant number of recommendations. I can't remember off the top of my head how many exactly, I think.
40.
Oh, 40 was it? Okay. Recommendations that have been accepted by National Council and are now being enacted in an ongoing way. And of course, the apology was the very start of that, and there's lots more work to do. But I wonder whether it's worthwhile just talking a little bit about the apology so they're aware of what's happened. So on the 21st of October, the formal apology was released. It's called Apology to Survivors of Abuse and Care. And since that apology has been made, there has been some people that have come forward to share that they too have experienced abuse in Baptist settings. And as a National Council, as a National Support Centre, we're incredibly grateful for their courage and the courage that it takes to speak up. And we remain really committed to responding to each and every person with care and integrity. It's really important, though, that this apology continues to go out and reaches as many people as possible, not just those that are currently connected in with our churches. And there might be people that have left our churches. We know there will be people who have left our churches and still sort of carry that pain of what's happened. And so Radio New Zealand and REMA and others have helped share the story, but we need every church community, every person to help as well. So we'd really encourage you to share the apology in your own communities and networks. If you go onto the Baptist website and you can go to resources and then abuse and care apology, and you can find the apology there. It's available in English and also Reo, Samoan Chinese, and easy to read English. And there is a video of Christine speaking the apology with captions underneath for people that might need a range of different formats in order to be able to understand really as easily as possible what's being said. So we would really, really encourage people to share that apology far and wide.
I guess one of the things that I noticed as came on board to assist in this process was there had been a really great acknowledgement from the Baptist Union at the time in July last year when the final report was released from the Royal Commission. And in many ways, that was great. That was quick out the gate. I think it was kind of within a couple of days of the report, which was fantastic to see. But it was one of the recommendations of the response group to go back and do a full apology, having really been able to digest the final report, to think about that across different Baptist contexts, to have had, some time and space to connect with people who'd come forward with stories and, to be able to then say, this is now our formal apology, now that we know a little more, particularly because the Baptist Union wasn't officially included within the Royal Commission, but 16 people did come forward and share stories of their own accord that were connected with the Baptist church or ministry. So we've seen it as being really important as part of the response group to make this stand and have this formality of apology at this stage, which I think is a really good decision that has been able to now go out there and allows people to access that moving forward when they are ready, if they haven't already come forward to share their experiences.
It really did feel for me upon publishing that this is a line in the sand, right? We have said sorry, but that saying sorry is not enough. We've got this time now where we can be hold ourselves and others can hold us accountable as well to this moment and this intent and action of being better in our spaces from the local through to the national spaces. So it was, it's a significant moment for us, but it's not the ending of a process, is it? We've got lots of work to keep doing. Maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the work that does need to keep happening. Let's talk about maybe big picture from National Council. What are you as a team doing with the other recommendations that you have received from the response group?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So as I've mentioned before, we've received the recommendations, we've accepted the report in full, and we're now in the process of working through step by step in actionable and implementable ways, steps that we can take. So obviously that started with the apology, but then what we've asked is for Charlotte to keep working with us to now go through an action plan that will address some specific actions. And maybe Charlotte could speak to the specifics of that. But what I want to say is that National Council is committed to the apology being a start of a process and not the end. And that we know that while there has been some changes to our systems and processes around complaints, around the code of ethics, around registration, that any safe system needs to be an ongoing learning system where we continue to take on feedback, we continue to work to create places that are safe. The other thing I want to say is that this is not just a past historical abuse situation. This is ongoing. I chair the subcommittee that looks at current complaints, and I can tell you that we continue to have issues within our churches around people feeling and being safe. And so this is urgent. This isn't just making the past right. This is about making the future right for people within our churches. But Charlotte, maybe you want to speak to the sort of the key focus that you'll be helping us with over the next 6 months.
Yeah. And I guess, firstly, to highlight from my perspective, there aren't 40 plus recommendations because there's been no effort made and the Baptist Union is completely unprepared in the space and there's a void of policy or a process at all. There are definitely improvements that can be made. And part of why we've got so many recommendations is because we've heard very clearly from people who are part of Baptist churches and from National Council, you want to be held to the highest possible standard of care for people and to have the best processes you can. So that's the brief, and that's why we're being really thorough in what this work is going to look like. So there are a few things that have come out as being key areas to focus on. One is that there needs to be a much clearer public process around exactly what it looks like when you come forward to share your experience. And what we want here, you'll notice that that language is quite deliberate. We want people sharing experiences. We don't necessarily want them going, oh, actually, this situation has progressed to the point of a really serious scenario and some kind of criminal offense. I'm, now at this point where there has been a serious situation that has occurred. We want people to come forward and say, something doesn't feel right about this dynamic, or I'm noticing the way this person's relating to this person, or holding power, or how women feel in this church, or our treatment of people from different cultures in this space. We want people to come forward and say, actually, things aren't right here. So part of the work that needs to happen for the Baptist Union is a lot more information about what that process actually looks like. What are the options for who you can talk to? What is it that might be available in terms of support for you? Who will know? How will this be documented? How's that going to be shared? How long is that stored for? People actually have really specific questions and need to feel very safe in the process of coming forward. Will I ever have to sit in a room with the person that I've got this grievance with? Actually, we need to set things up that it's really clear for people not just what the process is. We don't want to send people a policy and say, here's our complaints policy. We want to say, look, we know that this is a really big deal for people to speak up about something that's difficult. Here's as much as we can tell you about what this would look like and how we will care for you through this process. So a lot more effort and attention in that space. And, being really clear on what support looks like and having options for people will be a significant starting point. So there are some practical things like that. And some of the recommendations as well also relate to some much deeper culture points. So particularly the Royal Commission of Inquiry has been really helpful to churches in New Zealand because it's highlighted to us that certain people are more vulnerable than others to being treated poorly within church environments. And some of that comes down to the approach that we take, the views that are held, that mean that some people don't experience the same degree of safety as others and they are vulnerable. So one of the things we're proposing is that there are some working groups to get into actually how do we make the culture that we want within our churches? What do we need to do to ensure that there aren't some people who are left behind when it comes to safety? So there are both some really practical recommendations that are able to be implemented quite easily. And then there are also some deeper reflective processes that need to happen around how do we ensure safety for all people.
If I can just add to that just a little bit. Firstly, I just want to emphasise that National Council has a commitment on behalf of the Union of Churches to make sure that we're held accountable for taking actions. And there is local church accountability as well and within local organisations and ministries. So we need that sort of sense of movement within a local context, but we also need a collective accountability because abuse doesn't just happen within churches, it also happens between and across our different ways of functioning. We know that we need to share information to prevent prevent harm in new contexts if someone moves. So we need both an individual church ministry response as well as actions at a collective and national level. So National Council is going to be ensuring that there's transparency of reporting and that we're getting updates on progress and that we're taking steps. We'll be very clear in providing some public updates too around steps that have been taken to achieving these actions in response to the recommendations.
Cool. Can I come back, Charlotte, to one of the things that I think is really important that you said earlier around this is not just about I have experienced very clear, specific, undeniable abuse. It's way before that. It's that sense of I'm just a bit uncomfortable. I've got a question about, because that for me as a pastor, or maybe there are pastors listening, that could be a little bit scary of oh, Charlotte saw me talk to someone and now she's got a concern about the way I talk to them. But I think that actually is exactly the kind of thing that we need to be wrestling and reflecting on, right? And so can we unpack a little bit about kind of that point of communication where there is a concern around safety?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we need to make sure happens as well is that there is support available for everyone involved in a process. And that includes supporting a worker, a staff member, a volunteer, a pastor, where something is raised about them. So this is about, processing things well and caring for all people through those processes. Hopefully that also allows for people to be reflective when someone says, actually, this isn't sitting right for me. I'm experiencing you in this way. And that might not be their intention, but we interpersonally all have blind spots. Yeah. Someone can come away and go, actually, I experienced this. And one of the things we need to be aware of as well is people come into churches, all of us come into churches with our own stories, our own background of experiences. That means sometimes things might be triggering for us. And if they're triggering for us, they're likely triggering for other people too. So, we want an environment where pastors, where church workers are also safe in their ministry. So this is all part of processing and journeying well together so that we can listen to one another and ensure that we're showing up as our best selves, that everybody is safe. So, our concern around safety is also around people keeping themselves safe in ministry roles. We know that they come with pressure, that there can be stress and expectations and huge interpersonal demands in those roles. So, this is not about going out there with this kind of witch hunt, who's wrong approach when we're processing and walking through someone's feedback. But we are able to kind of go, okay, what learning needs to happen here? What support needs to be put in place? That there's much more of a kind of journeying way of approaching an issue.
And really, that for me, that sounds like a gift, even though it might be hard at the time. But that's because if I can be self-reflective on my behavior, how I'm presenting, or as you said, how I'm experienced, whether I recognize that or not, I think. Yeah, these processes actually could help me be a better person and better pastor potentially. So that's really helpful. Yeah, we don't have to wait until it gets really, really bad. This process is an invitation to us to be improving. When there are those interpersonal disagreements or misunderstandings. So it's really helpful. Thank you.
And if I could just add from my knowledge of complaints that are coming into the National Support Centre, many of them could have been dealt with a lot earlier if there was open communication and discussion and a spirit of learning, of curiosity, of listening, and of deep respect for each other in the process. So this is an invitation to do things, to be slightly different and to do things slightly differently. And that's how culture changes. That's how safety is developed and grown.
I think that that's one of the challenges in the Baptist context too, is that people don't really have clarity around, is this a local issue? Is this going to be processed within my church with a whole bunch of people I know? Or is this something I'm reaching out to the National Support Centre? Who are they? What's their role? How do they talk back to the local church? So when we have identified as part of the response group that there needs to be a lot more clarity around that, we're really needing to improve the communication that goes out around exactly what those processes look like, that if the National Support Centre or National Council are getting involved in a local situation, what does that look like? And how can a person who's come forward to share, what can they expect out of what that looks like too?
So when we read the report last year, we saw that there was a recommendation within that there would be some sort of redress scheme, potentially on a national level, that hasn't eventuated. It doesn't seem to be eventuating. So how are we responding in light of that? What can people expect with regards to the recommendation around redress?
Well, we know that a lot of people who have experienced abuse and harm have been waiting for the establishment of a national redress scheme. And what is looking to be the most likely scenario is that churches will need to take their own responsibility and have their own processes in the space rather than there being a national scheme. That is really inviting people now to not delay in coming forward, because if they have been waiting for there to be a national government-run process, that is likely to not be the case. So that is a change over the last year, as the government has also sat with the Royal Commission report and is determining how they want to proceed. What we know is that churches are being asked to take their own responsibility and have their own good processes.
Wow. So yes, again, it's another area that we have some work to do. So really important.
So I think what we really want to say, and what the apology is saying, and what we want to re-emphasise here today, is that we know that there are people listening who are carrying painful stories that they haven't shared, painful experiences. And while we don't want to rush anyone, or we don't want people to feel like they're being pressured, we also want to say, when and if you're ready, please make sure that you can come forward safely, in your own time and in your own way. And if you're aware of someone else's experience, please encourage them to seek support or reach out. You know, every story matters, and every person deserves to be heard with dignity and compassion. And that's what we're committed to doing. We really want people to feel safe, to come forward and share. And you can find more information about how to do that on the Baptist website.
I think one of the things to highlight there as well is that we know there's a time lag in people coming forward to share their stories. You know, it might be that they're in the sunset years of their life, and actually they're looking back and there is some grief, some sadness, some anger about how things went in their younger years, and they want to have some response to that. Perhaps they're, wanting some recognition for their wider whānau that helps make sense of how they've been in their lifetime as well. Or they're grappling perhaps with faith questions towards the end of their life and realizing that the abuse that occurred profoundly impacted their faith and their relationship with church. There can be this real time lag. Even, people who have experienced harm and then they become parents, and it becomes really significant for them to have a response, to use their voice, because they didn't have that voice in younger years. So we know that there is a time lag. And I guess part of my encouragement to add to what Rachelle has said is you can send someone else forward on your behalf to ask some questions, find out about the process, get some information for you, talk about what this process might look like. You don't have to come forward ready to share your story. You can come forward with questions too. You can have support in that. You can have a member of your family alongside you. You can have your pastor alongside you. You can have your neighbor, your child, whoever it is who feels like the right support for you, to be able to ask those questions so that you can then feel safe people's stories around abuse and harm are really sacred, and we want to treat them with the dignity that they deserve. So it's okay to be having questions and conversations about the process without necessarily going into the story. We need people to feel safe to share their story first. So know that you can send someone forward with questions, know that you can ask for information about the process, and that you working through this is allowed to be in your own time.
Rachelle, I wonder, could you speak to what National Council would actually really appreciate from us in the local level? I'm a pastor of a local church. What do I need to be doing within my space, and what do perhaps my leadership team need to be aware of?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. We're really keen for people to take the apology seriously for churches, to read it, to discuss it, to pray about it together, and to try and understand what it might mean for different churches in their sort of local context. One of the key things that there's a recommendation around was ensuring that we've got some local safeguarding people in place within local churches. So strengthening this local safeguarding policies and leadership training is really important, and something that we can all take steps towards without waiting for something from on high, so to speak. But we want you to also participate in this wider journey that we're on together. This is our collective responsibility. So ways that this isn't just a national council telling local churches what to do. This is a feedback loop of making sure that, as I mentioned before, that we're on a learning journey together. We know that small, consistent acts and steps in the right direction are all going to be helpful and are going to make the biggest difference. So reviewing your policies, looking at who's available to talk to people who might want to share their stories. Are there people who can have a safeguarding role within your local congregation? Are there people who are able to sit and listen and provide guidance about the process if someone wants to come forward? So those practical things that we can all be doing, along with those broader cultural changes that Charlotte talked about before. What are the things that within the culture of our church that we might need to be reflecting on and considering in an ongoing way? So sitting with that as well would be great.
What I'd add to that is that we know that people, when they experience harm, they experience it in local contexts. And we know that people who prevent harm and respond well when harm has happened do so in local contexts as well. So this is absolutely about us having the best advice available to support local churches. But this is something where we definitely need champions and people who have this real commitment to the experience of safety and well-being and dignity within local church environments.
Well, Charlotte, thank you so much for the way that you guided the response group and the way that you're going to continue to guide us as Baptists around New Zealand. And Rachelle, thank you for your work in National Council in keeping this in front of us as a movement and taking the steps that are going to require work for all of us, whether we're in a local, regional or national space within the Baptist movement. So thank you both so much for your time today and the work that you're doing and the encouragement that it is to have you leading us in this way.
Thanks, Charlotte. Kia ora.